It is a talent acquisition business, and Billy Napier and the Florida Gators have added some talent. We're going to talk about it here on Locked On Gators.
You are Locked On Gators, your daily podcast on the Florida Gators. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, and welcome back to another episode of Locked On Gators, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thanks for making Locked On Gators your first listen of the day. We're available daily and free wherever you listen to podcasts. Happy Tuesday. I'm Brandon Olson. Find my written work on Whole Nine Sports and Giants Country of SI.com. Twitter is WNS_Brandon. Florida Gators, of course, play this Saturday, and this episode of Locked On Gators is brought to you by Sling TV. Don't miss this week's Las Vegas Bowl between the Gators and Oregon State Beavers right here on Sling. Sling is the TV you love for a price you'll love. And moving into content, the Florida Gators have brought in their first transfer portal acquisition of the season. Caleb Banks, 6'7", 300-pound defensive lineman from Louisville. He's got 3 years of eligibility remaining. And Caleb Banks is an interesting one because he hasn't played much, had 23 pass rush reps this season for pressure, or 23 pass rush reps in the 2 seasons in Louisville, 4 pressures total, about 17.4% pressures, which that sounds great, but of course it's such a small sample size where it could be like, well, guess what? He had 3 pressures in a row and then didn't have any until he had 1 on his last rep, and things like that, where it's like, okay, so it's wildly inconsistent. It's impossible to tell. But the thing that interests me more is, given his size, 6'7", 300 pounds, massive human being, I think he'll most likely play that Gervon Dexter 3-tech role, which is also weird because I know right now most people are probably thinking the starting front 4 is going to be Princely Umanmielen on one side, Antoine Powell-Ryland on the other side. Then you've got on the interior Chris McClellan and Desmond Watson, most likely. Chris McClellan also started playing more of that 1-tech that Desmond Watson plays, where he's putting a little more pass rush work there. And so Caleb Banks' slot is interesting. I do think he plays that 3-tech. That seems to be the spot he's best fitted for. When watching the very little college film available on him, just because I had other players' Louisville tape, and well, he's there. So that I had other players' Louisville tape. I was watching Caleb Banks on it, and just going back with people that evaluated him when he was coming out of high school, the thing that people kept talking about was his bend, which is weird because you don't have a ton of space to operate in and kind of bend much as an interior rusher. So that's why I'm like, okay, this is clearly a projection ad. Someone where they're adding him in and saying, okay, we think he could become an effective interior rusher. I do think that you'll sometimes see him line up on the end, which I'll get to in a minute. But yeah, I think the thing that where you say, okay, like bend is his biggest trait, and it's bend and his athletic ability are the 2 main things that people will talk about when you talk about Caleb Banks, because 6'7", 300 pounds is huge. Add in a 6'7", 300-pound athlete. That sounds like a nightmare. Gervon Dexter is someone who's just massive and an athlete, and that was, I mean, obviously that's what's going to get him drafted no later than round 2 in the NFL draft this year. Solid bend, works on the edge. I think the goal ultimately is for him to be what Gervon Dexter was. They want him to be an athletic mismatch for interior linemen where, yeah, bend won't be something he can really do bending around the edge because he won't have an edge to bend around, but just having him be able to be quicker than a lot of interior linemen is going to give them fits. It's going to give them issues. As for working him around the edge and maybe giving him an opportunity to bend, yeah, he's 6'7", 300 pounds. That's huge. You usually don't see people that big working on the edge. But NFL teams have started to do that this year and last year, where they'll put defensive tackles over on the edge as stand-up edge rushers. So it wouldn't shock me if that's something where Patrick Toney brought in. That's just, if he brought that in, that's not something that would surprise me, whether it's Patrick Toney or Sean Spencer that wants to do it, or Mike Peterson, whoever wants to do it. It wouldn't shock me if Caleb Banks started lining up on the edge a little bit, because like I just mentioned, NFL teams have done it. If you watched Thursday Night Football last week, if you watched yesterday's interview with myself and Jonathan Bostic, we spoke about how the Rams would put a defensive tackle on the field as a stand-up edge rusher. And that was where the Raiders handed it off to Matt Collins on end arounds and reverses to get that same defensive player in space, that same D tackle standing up on the edge in space and outrun him. So, yeah, there are flaws to it, but there's also a reason that NFL teams do it. You get a big dude on the tackle where he's probably used to facing these smaller, more athletic defensive ends and edge rushers, and so you can create some mismatches. And I think that's an important part with Florida is as they get more of their guys in, they're going to work more on creating those mismatches, whether it's in coverage, rushing the passer, and anywhere you could do it, they're going to try to create these mismatches, these size mismatches, these speed mismatches, whatever it is. And so Caleb Banks, I think, helps take this Florida Gators defense. He helps them take that next step towards doing that, towards being able to be more creative, towards being able to open up and expand your repertoire a little bit. And I think that for a first transfer portal ad of the season, I think he's a great transfer portal ad. Obviously, he had an official visit this past weekend, fell in love with it, and immediately, we'll say, we'll put air quotes around that because it was a few hours, but committed to Florida the day after the day that the official visit ended. We're about to talk about some other Florida Gators portal needs, but first, fall is in the air. That means that you get to grill with these awesome cookouts, tailgate parties, and so much more, because today's episode is brought to you by Omaha Steaks. And luckily, the flavor experts at Omaha Steaks have made it easy for you to savor all the flavors of fall with their mouth-watering assortments of perfectly aged steaks, ultra juicy burgers, and easy to prepare comfort meals that are ready in a flash. We were grilling this past weekend. Man, I love you, Omaha Steaks. Just know that. Now is the perfect time to load up on all this incredible flavor and take advantage of 50% off site-wide by shopping their friends and family sale. Go to omahasteaks.com. Use promo code LOCKED ON at checkout to get $30 off your order. Don't wait. Just go omahasteaks.com. Stock up today. Get it in time for the holidays. Fantastic gifts, by the way. And you won't come close to getting this kind of quality at the grocery store ever. Visit omahasteaks.com. Use promo code LOCKED ON at checkout, and a minimum order may be required. Thanks again for making Locked On Gators your first listen of the day. We're available daily and free wherever you listen to podcasts. And for the rest of today's show, we're going to talk about some portal needs for the Florida Gators. 2 on the offensive side, 2 on the defensive side. We're going to start with the offensive side of the ball. And the obvious one here, quarterback. I know Florida's been either rumored or confirmed to be in contact with Sam Hartman, who isn't even officially in the transfer portal. Devin Leary, Jeff Sims, Graham Mertz was on campus this past weekend. DJ Uiagalelei, I apologize if I murdered that name. And here's this. And every quarterback that has ever entered the transfer portal, Florida has been connected to. It's just that everybody is like, okay, well, maybe they'll be a Gator, because obviously Anthony Richardson declared for the draft. Kitna no longer with the program. Jack Miller III getting his first game action of the season this week against Oregon State. He will be the starting quarterback, which is going to be a massive test for him, but one that's also going to be incredibly difficult to evaluate. Max Brown is on the roster as a true freshman. I don't think he was even active for, I don't think he traveled with the away team. I think for home games, obviously he was in uniform, but was was never going to play, if we're going to be honest, this year. And Billy Napier is very open about that with Max Brown specifically, where he was like, hey, this is a redshirt year. This is him learning the playbook. This is him learning how to play quarterback for us. This is him learning how to do all these things. And well, maybe next year he'll be in that competition, which I'm not really expecting it to be. But Florida's pushing for all of these transfer quarterbacks reportedly. I know that I think it was 24/7 was like, DJ and DJ Yongile and Yongile, right? Yeah. And the Florida Gators are a perfect fit. I disagree. Yeah, no, I disagree. I think he is one of the worst fits for Florida because he's someone who has been wildly erratic. He's someone who has been so much promise and hasn't really lived up to it. And I think people are just like, oh, they did it with Anthony Richardson, so that's the quarterback they want. No, I think for 2023, you're looking more likely at a Devin Leary, at a Sam Hartman if he's available. And you're looking at someone who can come in and compete right away with Jack Miller III, compete right away with Jaden Rashada when he gets on campus, compete right away with Max Brown if he's involved in the competition. Right away is the point. Florida and Billy Napier, they're not going in here going, okay, who are the project type quarterbacks that we're going to need a couple years to develop? Because here's the thing, as far as 2023 is concerned, if you want to play someone that you need to develop, you just play Jaden Rashada. You know you'll have him for 3 years if he's a starter. So you know you'll have him for 3 years at least. So if you want someone that, hey, might be a rough year, but we're going to develop him, go Jaden Rashada. If you want someone that you feel is a bit safer with a lower ceiling, go Jack Miller III. I'm not saying he's a higher floor, but a lower ceiling, Jack Miller III. If you're more comfortable with him, someone who's been in college football for a couple of years, someone who has been with the playbook and in this offensive system for a year, there you go, Jack Miller III. But when you're looking in the portal for Florida as a quarterback, you're looking for someone who can step in right away and kind of stabilize the program. Because right now, receivers, you got a ton of young receivers coming in. They look good. You got Ricky Pearsall on campus already. You got Xavier Henderson on campus already. Tight ends, which we're about to talk about. A lot of youth. Offensive line looks very good. Richard Garage likely confirmed going to the draft by accepting the Senior Bowl invite. And then defense, you got a lot of young guys coming in. You've got some players stepping up and making their next step, hopefully. You want someone that can stabilize the program because right now the biggest thing is who the hell is going to be playing quarterback for the Florida Gators next year. That's what you're looking for in the portal. Also, like I just mentioned, tight end, I think is the next need for the transfer portal list on the offensive side. I like the youth on roster at tight end. I do, obviously. Have not been shy about that at all. I'm not sure if they're ready for 2023. So that's what I'm looking at. I'm looking, again, someone who could step in right away. Even if, let's say, Florida gets Jaden Platt, the 4-star tight end that was committed to Stanford, has decommitted. I know he visited Florida. Let's say Jaden Platt becomes a Gator. I still don't think 2023 looks great for Florida tight ends because freshman tight ends usually don't contribute immediately. That's I think a pretty obvious one. But I'm also looking more for a pass catching tight end where Jaden Platt's more of a blocking type. I think Jonathan Odom for 2023, if he's healthy, should be the starting tight end in terms of the blocking role that Dante Sanders played this year. I think Jonathan Odom is, one, a better blocker than Dante Sanders. Two, I think he's a better receiver than Dante Sanders. And three, he's got more eligibility remaining than Dante Sanders, so he can step in immediately and play for 2 years before going to the league. As far as the pass catching tight end spot, it's not a knock on Keon Zipperer that I just think that you can probably get I don't want to say more dynamic, but I think you need more than what Keon Zipperer brought this year. I think Keon Zipperer could do it. I'm obviously a big fan of Keon Zipperer. I've been talking about him, but I'm looking at Arkansas State because Seydou Traore has hit the transfer portal. He was, I think, He led the Sun Belt in catches. He was, I think, third, or led the Sun Belt in catches from a tight end, third nationally as a tight end. So Seydou Traore, he'd be my highest priority right now looking at tight ends in the transfer portal, especially pass catching type. It's got to be Traore, and I want Billy Napier and I want William Peagler to go out there and go get him. We're about to take a look at the defensive side of the ball, but first, today's episode of Locked On Gators is brought to you by Built Bar. It's almost New Year's time. It's almost New Year's resolution time. I know mine is going to be about getting fit. I started doing it a bit early because needed it. So I'm going to say that needed it. But one thing that you can do if that is going to be your New Year's resolution, order now and start planning now, because once the New Year's hit, you're going to be like, oh, damn, it's time to get into action. So at least have your plan ready. One way to do that is Built Bar. If you've got a sweet tooth like myself, which is always my Achilles heel here, guess what? Coated in 100% chocolate. Most bars have 130 calories. That's it. Just 4 net carbs, along with 17 grams of protein. Built bars always come out also with new limited time flavors, so you'll never get bored. Use promo code LOCKEDON15 to get 15% off of your next order with Built or BuiltBar.com. To wrap up today's show, I don't think there are a ton of portal needs on defense. I alluded to this a little bit earlier when talking about not putting a receiver on that list, because you have a lot of young players who are going to be coming in from high school that could legitimately be early contributors. You look at, for the offensive side of the receiver, freshman receivers come in and make plays all the time in college football. You look at the defensive side of the ball, freshman DBs come in and make plays often, especially if they're the ball hawking type where it's like, oh, if a quarterback sees a freshman, they're like, oh, well, that's who I'm going to challenge, especially if he's playing opposite Jason Marshall. That's the guy I'm going to throw at. And then they make some mistakes, and the freshmen take advantage of that. So that's why it's like, I don't think there are a ton of needs, but I will say the biggest one has to be linebacker. No more Ventrell Miller. No more Amari Burney. And I am perfectly cool with Shamar James and Derek Wingo rolling in as the top 2 linebackers on the team. I'm even perfectly cool with Scooby Williams being added in there and having the top 3 linebackers on the team. But I can't look at this as a good idea in the sense of, I can't say Shamar James has a year of playing experience. Derek Wingo and Scooby Williams have 2 seasons of inconsistent playing time. I can't look at those 3 and that experience and say, that's a good idea, along with true freshman Jaden Robinson coming in. I can't look at those 3 and be like, oh, this is an awesome position right now. Like, this is an awesome linebacker room to have. It could be, but I'm looking for some experience, some kind of experience, some kind of leadership, veteran leadership that could step in. I know Derek Wingo has said he wants to step in and be a leader. I'm looking also for veteran leadership. You don't need just one leader. So I'm looking for veteran leadership. I'm looking at Antonio Greer, who I've spoken about before on the show. The day he hit the transfer portal, I was like, hey, guys, I want him. Linebacker, South Florida. Great football player. Mason Cobb, linebacker, Oklahoma State. Fantastic football player. Bring him to the SEC and let's see if he can keep that rolling. Like, those are my top 2 options when we're looking at off-ball linebackers that could potentially come in immediately and fill the role that Ventrell Miller and Amari Burney are leaving. Because again, I'm fine with Shamar James. I'm fine with Derek Wingo. I'm fine with Scooby Williams. But I think you really need a veteran leader in there, because it is so hard to go, okay, Shamar James stepping up from rotational to starter, going to be great. Going Derek Wingo stepping in from rotational to starter, going to be great. I think it's incredibly hard to project 2 guys to go from rotational roles to starting roles, as well as projecting Scooby Williams to step into a heavier rotational role, Jaden Robinson being a true freshman to step into a rotational role. Whoever is going to be the guy that steps up, whether it's Jack Pyburn, I don't care who it is. it's going to be someone without experience. I think you need to add someone who can go in and kind of, again, like I mentioned with quarterback, stabilize the room. I think that's what we're looking for a linebacker. Looking at edge, I don't care if it's Jack, the stand-up linebacker that Florida has, or just a hand-in-the-dirt defensive end like Princely Umanmielen played. I will also say, I don't think it's not even massive. I don't think it's a big need at all. I think that you could add someone who could contribute immediately, though, because Florida has a massive 2023 class, especially along the defensive front, where it's like, oh, are you a stand up pass rusher? Are you a hand in the dirt pass rusher? Are you an interior defensive lineman? Are you a more run focused defensive end? What are you? That's going to be hard to figure out, especially while you're looking at this 2023 class and you've got a lot of those guys that are tweener roles. And a lot of the tweener roles are likely going to become specialists. We're likely going to say, okay, no, you're going to be a 3 tech for us. Let's get your weight up. You're going to be a stand up edge rusher for us. Let's get your weight down a little bit. That's something where you're going to have to figure out, and guys are going to have to fluctuate. They're going to have to work with a strength and conditioning program. So I think it could help to bring in someone who could be an immediate 2023 contributor, which again, I think a lot of the guys will be that are coming in from high school, but I also think that it's hard to expect that from them. And I think it's hard to expect them to be positive contributors on a significant basis and on a consistent basis. So I think that's the difficult part. We're bringing in someone who has just even experience there, like Mario Eugenio, Florida kid, leaving Cincinnati Bearcats with their coaching changes. Great size to play on the line, 6'3", 245 is what he's listed at with Cincy. Great size to play on the line. Handwork, way better than probably any true freshman that you're going to get. Probably better than most guys that are in that portal right now. Yeah, he's got 1 year of experience with Cincinnati and barely touched the field. But he's got a year of, I mean, he gained 15 pounds this year. He's got a year of strength and conditioning staff. Same reason that I want Prince Dorba to be a look at Florida, be a name that Florida takes a look at. He's from Texas. He played for Texas, hit the portal. Florida's shown that they are willing to go into Texas and grab a football player. Like they've been doing it with recruiting, they're trying to do it. With portal, they're going to try to do it. Nothing's changed here. Dorba's been with Texas for 3 years. I believe he's got 2 years of eligibility remaining. He hasn't played much. But again, having someone who has, actually, I think he's got 3 years of eligibility. Having someone who has 3 years of not just Power 5, but like high quality Power 5 strength and conditioning is a big plus. That's my biggest concern with these new high school kids coming in, is that they are going to have to work with the strength and conditioning staff to get up to speed and get into a playing weight and a playing size. So you eliminate that by having someone who's got years of experience with that already, and he could step in and be a rotational player for you immediately, again, with the likely starting edges being Antoine Powell-Ryland and Princely Umanmielen. So you just need a rotational guy here. So I think that both Mario and Prince, it's like, okay, well, as long as you play me, as long as you play me, I'll be there. I don't need to start because it's playing me is better than I've seen so far in college. Thanks for making Locked On Gators your first listen of the day every day. We are available daily and free wherever you listen to podcasts. We'll be back tomorrow to talk more Florida Gators. We'll probably start to take a look at the Las Vegas Bowl this weekend. For your second listen, check out Locked On SEC, hosted by Chris Gordy of Sports 790. Get the best coverage on the best conference, including the best university, the University of Florida. For Locked On Gators, I'm Brandon Olson. Don't forget to follow me on Twitter at WNS_Brandon. Find my written work with Whole Nine Sports and Giants Country of SI.com. And I will see you all tomorrow.